So for the last about, I don't know, 7 or 8 months, Kaylee and I have been sick, or Kaylee for sure. The kids were sick. The kid's mom and her husband and his mom and freaking everybody we knew sick. We're
Yeah.
back.
Yay.
Yay! Now, during a lot of that, Kaylee didn't watch anything. She was Gonzville for like 5 days. She just straight up sat in bed and couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And so if you thought like, oh, they've, been sick, so they've probably been sitting at home watching lots and lots of movies.
Nope.
No, no.
Sadly, we did not.
I watched some things without her, and then we watched a few things together. And that's what we're here to talk about. This is going to be a bit of a change up. Typically, we would do all of these reviews separately from one another. But we're just going to do a rapid fire. What did we watch while we were sick? Let's talk about them. Quick thoughts, whatnot. And I think we'll start with this one here, which is the one Kaylee and I watched together, which is Deus
Irae?
Irae. Now I won't speak for Kaylee, but a plot synopsis on this one is tough for sure. I can tell you that it's a religious horror film that deals with exorcism. And, as you guys are familiar with when it comes to me, that's like my least favorite subgenre. And this one doesn't really have a cohesive story, to say the least. It is almost like a fever dream kind of a movie. It really does feel all over the place when it comes to its narrative. And I know how much that can hurt some people's experience, but I don't need anything like that per se. I mean, would it have bettered the film? Yes. If I had connected with some kind of a story, sure. But this movie's like blasphemous and evil, and it has some of my favorite practical effects of the year. This is like
Oh, wow.
a
You're like really high
true
on it.
this is like a true horror film though. Like everything in
Hmm.
this movie is horror from beginning to end. There's
Yeah.
nothing in this film. This isn't, there's movies that I put on my top 10 list this year that are definitely going to get like questionable comments about, was this horror? Is that even really horror? And horror thriller, blah blah blah. We can go down that rabbit hole of arguing back and forth semantics about what makes horror horror. But this movie, I mean, there's no other genre that this would fit in any scene. This is just pure horror
Yeah.
the whole time, and there is so much horrifying imagery that pops up in this movie that I can't help but love it. Right? I just love this kind of stuff. I love being visually frightened by what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just because I was sick. I don't know, but I definitely didn't like this movie as much as you did. I do think that it has some really great practical effects in it for sure. Um, and I do agree that there's like some very like standout imagery and visuals and that it feels evil, but I was so confused the entire movie. I was just like, what the fuck is happening right now? And I think that's intentional. I mean, I could maybe kind of be like, oh, I want to say that this is what's going on. But I just felt so lost the entire time that I was having a really hard, I was just having such a hard time following. And again, I was watching this on definitely one of my sicker days. So it's totally possible that I just was not like mentally equipped to be watching so demonic a film.
Yeah.
um,
Well, it's on
but yeah,
Screambox. If you are a fan of exorcism type movies and you like really cool practical effects and a story that doesn't make any sense
No
and
sense.
leaves itself off for a part two, I would assume, has to be coming
Yeah.
because the way that they do this, it ends with like, you know, end of book one, and the story feels not only just incomplete, but uh, non-existent.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I am very curious. I would love to see a second one. I would love to see more from this because, man, what striking visuals this film had to offer, and for me, that's enough. You know, that's
Mm.
we had talked about pretty similar things when we went and saw Azrael, right?
Mm.
You are very much like, if the story ain't there for me, then this I'm not into it. And I feel like
I
that's not always the case, but it definitely seems to be a commonality.
It's more like because I'm fine with being like slightly confused, but when I feel like lost the whole time, I'm just like, I don't know what's going on, so I have a hard time like making
I get
a
it.
connection. But I do agree that the visuals are cool and like dark. So,
Yeah, it's like easy top five practical effects of the year for me.
hmm,
I think that the movie has so much to offer visually.
hmm,
Um, so yeah, that's a positive note there.
hmm.
Okay, moving on to a film that I watched. I mean, I watched all of these with you
Yeah.
to some degree. Kaylee watched either like 10%, 50%, or 100% of all of these. So we'll just start at the top of this list, I guess, and make our way through it. Next up, we got Jeffrey's Hell, which is a kind of meta sequel to a movie called Chest that we watched last year,
Hmm.
and I thought that this one was good, but the thing that held it back was our main character is played by the director, and he is very natural and good when he's just doing his kind of
Like
expositional
normal guy
dialogue, like
stuff.
just kind of, yeah, just kind of
Yeah.
basic guy stuff. But as soon as he has to act, as soon as he's scared, as soon as you have to turn up the dial,
Yeah.
it gets bad. The acting from him gets really poor once he has to be scared. But I actually thought there was some cool visuals
Yeah, I
that
did
happen
too.
here. Nowhere near like what we just talked about. But
Mm-mm.
for a found footage film with no budget and whatever, there was a couple shots that were cool. Essentially, the movie, really quick, is about a guy, you know, the real life guy who made Chest,
Yeah.
and he's going into Jeffrey's Hell to investigate the real local legend of that area, and gets himself trapped in a cave because he goes out there by
Which is
himself like a dummy.
terrifying, like that alone.
Yeah, I mean, he
But
had
he
to have
is super dumb to go out there alone.
I mean, he had to have some climbing experience, and he had to really go down into these really small caverns
Yeah.
with a camera. And I'm sure, you know, he had a crew there that were just off frame and whatever. But, you know, you still had to have people go into these areas, this low budget team who, you know, this ain't a Hollywood production. Anything happens to them, they're screwed. There could be animals in there, it could be anything. So it is ballsy to do something like this. But yeah, I liked this better than Chess. I think this is an upgrade. I think for you know, film number three, he needs to hire professional actors and maybe stop stealing from other scripts a little too much.
Yeah, there's
As
a
above, so below.
yes. Yeah, there's a good amount of that in the end of this.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I was like whatever on this one. I think that like you said there's a couple good like visual shots. Um but I think that like because of how similar the ending reminded me to As Above So Below, I wasn't that into it because I love As Above So Below. I think it's like one of the best found footage films out there. I think it's a really cool one, and you know, every film is inspired by others. And maybe it was meant to be like, you know, homages, but I just feel like so much of the ending is so similar to the ending of As Above, So Below, and that to me is a bit lame, I guess.
Yeah.
But I would like to see like more, just more from him, and maybe, as you said, like more actors and just kind of playing around with more original like concepts for scripts, I guess.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. So, all right, next up is a movie called Wineville. I checked
oh
this
my
out
god,
because
this
this was on somebody's. Oh, this was Lee.
yeah.
That's right. This is Lee from Drum Dums. He put this on some top 10 list for the year. He was like, most biggest like surprise, the most overlooked films
Lee,
of
oh my
2024.
god,
And this was number one.
I
This was
I
number
had a
one. And I was like, what
fever
the fuck?
of 102 when we were watching this.
I think it
But
went to
oh
106 by the end of
my
it.
god.
So yeah. Uh this wasn't good. I'm actually pretty shocked, to be honest. I do wonder how many independent films people watch, like low budget independent films people watch. Um this definitely had some softcore porn actors
100%.
in it for
It
sure.
felt like it
Um
was 2 seconds away at every scene.
The film is trying now. Kaylee saw some bits of this. I don't know how much, not a bunch. I think this is the one you watched the least amount
mm.
of. I watched all of it, obviously. So with this one, you know, the movie tried so hard to be as like nasty and edgy as possible, right? This is one of the more try hard films I'd seen this year or last year now, technically. Because it's this woman who's coming back to this property that her dad left her after he died, and she had a horrible relationship with him, and is just coming back to, you know, for the inheritance. It's one of the most common setups for all horror films, the inheritance.
Yeah.
It's like the thing that will never bring them back.
Yeah.
They have to go back to sign the papers or whatever. And she brings her kid, and the top that she has on when she brings her child and he's standing there with her, that I already knew I was in trouble. Like, just the top alone that she was wearing in front of her kid, I was like, oh my god, like, are we supposed to take this seriously? I mean, you're talking about like a vest with nothing else, and a girl that clearly has had a breast augmentation, and she has one singular button of this vest, and it is the lowest button, and her tits are like out, and the buttons down here, at, at any angle you're seeing nipple, at any, it was just wild. And I was like, and she's played as a very
Like straight character.
nurturing, loving mother
Yeah.
who's very straight, like, yeah,
Yeah,
straight laced.
she's not supposed to be like a wild child, like ultra promiscuous or something, but
Not
every
at
time
all.
I saw her, and this is not to slut shame or anything, but she's like constantly in these like very slutty outfits,
Yeah,
which is what makes it kind of feel like you're gonna watch like a porno at some point. And not to mention some of the other like there's like sexual stuff going on. But yeah, just like the outfit choices definitely made it feel very like sleazy. And it was kind of weird because I think normally, like, we watch plenty of horror movies where women unfortunately get objectified and put into like skimpy outfits. But definitely, like, most of the time, it's like,
unfortunately.
well, it's like younger, it's like, you know, the teens or like young adults or whatever, right? Like, it's like people that you expect, I guess, to be kind of wild, not like a mom with a 10-year-old boy,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like, you don't normally see moms dressed like that
Right.
in movies.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was funny more than anything, as like wardrobe. Really? That's what you went with? The movie's supposed to be set in the 70s, I think. Um,
You
but
could
yeah,
tell by her blue eyeshadow.
yeah. But there's so many ridiculous moments. So stupid. Like there's okay, for instance, one in particular I have to mention. There's this gay kid who gets dropped off there cuz like they pull up on our like hunky guy in the movie, and he's, showering with the hose out there with his shirt off, and he turns around and he's all buff, and the gay guy's like, "Oh, hi, like, you guys do wine tastings?" And, he lures him in, and the girls in the car are like, "All right." And he's like, "You can go, I'll call you, whatever, blah, blah, blah," right?
Hmm.
He ends up getting killed. And our cop, played by Texas Battle from Final Destination 3, he is like investigating it. And he's coming there to ask them if they've seen him.
Hmm.
And they're like, no. And it's like, he was dropped off there by three witnesses who saw specifically not only where he went, but who he went with.
Yeah.
And the cop can't figure out who the killer is. The cop can't figure out where this guy was left off, but he is there interviewing them because he ends up like dating the girl, which is really funny because she's like dating him, and they're all super romantic, and they have this like really cute romantic scene together. And then literally the next scene is her making out with the hot, like,
Mm.
ranch hand kind of guy. So that was super funny, especially from what you find out, which is like the most obvious twist of all time. But the fact that like the police work couldn't be any better than that,
Yeah.
and just as I said, the movie is trying so hard to throw in every imaginable thing with incest and rape and all of it. As I said, they're trying, and it's a very very stupid film. So I'm genuinely shocked. While I was watching it, I thought maybe I put on the wrong film. Anyway, all right, another found footage film. We've got The Coldness.
Mm.
This is about a guy who is a retired cop, and he's talking about an old case that he worked in the 90s, I think 1999. And it was about this girl who locked herself in her own fridge and froze herself to death, leaving a note behind saying only the coldness. It's something that had screwed with his mind his whole career until he retired, and now he's found out it's happened again.
Mm.
So he's making a documentary to document his findings as he tries to reinvestigate this case as a civilian. Overall, the opening I loved. When he was talking, I
Mm.
thought that the performance from our main guy felt very authentic. I thought he felt like a genuine, like, retired cop.
Yeah.
And I thought that the like world building of the girl who locked herself in the fridge and the way he tells the story and
Yeah.
the eerie details of it, I was like, "Ooh, I'm super into this."
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and I didn't, and I did end up liking the film, but the movie kind of fell apart because it didn't stick with the investigation of the the suicides,
Mm.
and it started to go down a different path, and it veered too quick, too fast, and it kind of shot the narrative, which was such a shame because I thought it was very cool, and there was a way to do what they wanted to end up doing, but they just slipped out of it too quickly. It just went from one thing to a completely different thing too fast.
Yeah, I think I watched like maybe
Most.
70% of
Yeah.
this, but I agree with you about the opening. I thought his performance was like really great in the opening, and very authentic. But I remember feeling like I wasn't like there wasn't enough like horror, I guess, in this for me.
Mm.
Like I feel like some of the stuff that happened was just it feels more like I mean, and I guess this is definitely what's going for a cold case. Like,
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
So that worked, but it was okay.
Yeah. All right, next up, another found footage film.
On
Invoking,
yeah.
yeah. So this is on Shudder currently, and is fucking terrible.
This is
I
a
hated this film. This is a black metal band. Three girls go out and they're gonna record some uh, like ghost sounds for their demo, and two of them are in the band. The third one isn't. The third one definitely isn't.
the
She
camera
thinks
girl
she
is
might be, but she's
only
not in.
recording.
Oh my fucking god!
This
This is
is
one of the
just
most
all
repetitive.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I didn't watch all this movie, but the
God,
characters
you're
were
lucky.
so insufferable. And we kept like commenting like how just shitty they were. Like the main like lead singer, like there is so pretentious about being in like not just a black metal band, but like a, de- what was it? It was like a suicidal
Yeah,
depression metal band, and
yeah,
like was very into this like idea of pain and agony and
yeah,
torment and like the pureness of that,
yeah,
and it was just super lame. And the way they kept treating the girl that's like filming them, who was there like also as like a metal fan and trying to help out and stuff, it
yeah,
was just awful.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like the biggest gatekeepers imaginable. They're total elitists, and to watch an entire film of them just talk about how they know the genre better than anybody, and that they will be the people who uh, only make the only good black metal music in all of Chile, and that everyone else is a poser, and that everything is about the suffering. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, oh my god, that's like all the fucking film is, right? So it's just them being filmed walking around talking about how uh talking about black metal, but not in an interesting way, just in the most pretentious way, which I have to assume is on purpose. I have to assume this is intentional. And I
Mm.
guess in that way, they're successful. So if you were just like trying to annoy the fuck out of us and make us hate them, then good job. Because these are like the worst kinds of people, right?
Yeah.
Any genre fans who sniff their own farts and really just genuinely get in their head that their opinion is the best of the best, and that all anyone else who doesn't fall into their camp is posers,
Hmm.
and that all of them just need to get the fuck out of the genre, and that they don't really have a place in it. And I hate these types of people. We could talk
Yeah.
about this endlessly. There's a lot of gatekeeping going on in the horror community. There's a lot of
Mm.
gatekeeping that goes on in every community, and we are as far from gatekeepers as they can come.
Hmm.
I always defend like casual horror fans. I'm always just like, yeah, yeah, whatever. Everybody has a different level of
Oh
fandom,
yeah,
and
I
there's nothing wrong with it.
yeah, absolutely.
And
For
you
every
can
fandom. I think you can like one song of some artist and be like, I like this type of music. I don't know. I mean, I think you can always branch out and like have more options. So you've never seen everything, you've never watched everything, you've never read everything in a certain genre.
people want to feel special.
So,
It's
but
always
yeah,
what it
this
comes
was
down to.
very a lame movie.
Yes, yeah, and nothing ends up happening, and then towards the very, very end, as soon as something starts happening, I honestly didn't care by that point. And what happens is obvious and lame as fuck, and then there's like an added lame as fuck ending that I was just like, what? No, absolutely not. Dreadful film. One of my least favorite found footage films of the year. All right, next up, a movie we watched last night called Laced. This is
Hmm.
about a girl planning on killing her abusive husband. This is a thriller. This we watched because I was watching a bunch of year-end lists. seeing like, is it possible I missed anything? I don't know why I think that at this point now, having watched 298 horror films. But I was just like, screw it. This was on someone's top 10 of the year.
Oh.
That's kind of crazy to me, to be honest. But, as I said, everyone's tastes are their tastes. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, this is, uh, this is fine. It's a fine little thriller. I think it's, an attempt at trying to be some Hitchcockian,
Hmm.
uh, you know, dinner table thriller, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
the best laid plans go horribly
Oh yeah,
wrong, right? Of
absolutely.
course.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I liked it fine. I think that it was really competently made. I think it was well acted. I liked everybody's performance for sure. And I liked the writing and everything. Like I didn't have a problem with really anything. Maybe pacing a little bit at
Mm.
some points, but
Or lacing.
yeah. No, I mean, I liked it. I initially like started off, like when you like the abusive husband aspect doesn't get like um expanded on until later in the film. So like initially I was kind of like I don't know if this person
Yeah.
deserves to get killed.
All right.
Um but then by the end I'm like, "Oh yeah, I guess he kind of did deserve to die." But
Which that's probably the biggest issue with the film, right? For me, it comes down to, if you are going to play it the way that they played it, which they're not making him the more obvious shitty husband, right? Like
yeah.
they could have made him, as soon as he came home, he knocked her around the house, right? Like then it would have been like, oh, okay, like you would have been all in and it would have been a completely different film. But they kind of do play in this area of like, is it enough? Like he seems kind of like a dick here and there a bit, but like just leave him. Like he doesn't
Right.
seem that terrible. So I think the film would have been better, because I was watching it the whole time thinking, oh man, if they just tweaked that, if they just changed this, right? If there was a little more nuance to certain things, you would have a much better film. If you could have taken this aspect and ramped it up and really kept the audience guessing, like, you know, maybe the wife's just fucking crazy.
Hmm.
Maybe he's a great guy, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then keep it to a place where you are in the dark and you are like wondering,
Hmm.
and then reveal little things throughout, like, oh no, I think maybe he is an asshole, okay, never mind, and then another thing comes out, like, oh fuck, all right, maybe not, oh damn, I don't know. If you could have done that, and then there would have been a more of a fight in between the characters because of it, because there's added characters that are introduced into the film, and I think that would have given their voices more weight, um to be like, to be more on one side and the other.
Yeah.
That's where I think this film could have really benefited, and so as it stands, I think it's a pretty straightforward, fairly generic thriller,
Hmm.
but just with some tweaks in the dialogue and some tweaks in the story, I think this could have been exponentially better. And I feel like I could have written this, if I could have gotten the script and done a rewrite on it. I think it would have been at least twice as good. Ego, whatever. I just saw places where I was like, oh man, just right there, you could really take
Yeah.
the audience for a loop, right? You could even have it, be that reveal of like, you make it seem very obvious throughout,
Yeah.
and then you find out like, no, she's the abusive
Yeah.
one, right? Anyway, anything more on that one?
No. That's all. It's in Colorado.
Hmm. Next up, we got You Shall Not Sleep Tonight. This is an anthology film that we had started a long time ago. So it's
Yeah.
funny. I started this. This is craziest shit ever. I started this, watched a little bit of it, and was like, oh, Kaylee might like this. So Kaylee and I started it, watched some of it,
Yeah.
shut it off. Don't know what the hell happened. We didn't finish it. We were like liking it, and then we stopped. Then I started watching it on my own again for about 5 minutes, and then was like, no, I started this with Kaylee. I'm gonna finish this with Kaylee. And then last night we finally,
We
or
finished.
we watched some of it, and then this morning we finished
Yeah,
it.
this morning
So
we
it took
finished it.
5 different viewings to finally finish
Yeah.
this over the last like 6 months. We did start it over yesterday though,
Yeah,
from
we
the
started
beginning.
it. Yeah.
So it's not like we waited 5 months and then went and
No.
started it from where we left off. No. We restarted this thing. And all of that effort was for nothing. This is an anthology movie, and it's got to be one of the worst anthology movies I've seen because the
It's
stories
bad.
are so uneventful.
It's so they're all like they just all feel so incomplete. Where you and like so short, and by the time you think something's gonna happen, it's over. Like it's already finished. One of them doesn't even feel like horror at all. Like one of them is just I don't even know what it is.
Yeah,
The best segment is probably the séance, which happens fairly early on.
I like the dad. I thought was kind of cool.
Oh, the wraparound.
No,
Oh,
the they're coming to collect the bodies.
oh yeah, that one was actually pretty cool too, but still too short. Like nothing
Sure, it doesn't go
happens.
anywhere.
Nothing happens.
It literally ended. I can't tell you how many times throughout that because there's like 5 different segments that I was just like looked over at Kaylee and was like, "That's
That's it.
it? That's the
Yeah.
ending of it? We're moving on?"
Yeah, that
I
was
thought we
it.
were getting going. I thought that was like the beginning. Like what? So it was like these half baked ideas that they put together. It's like they filmed. What it feels like is we have 5 films that got started being made, and all of them were abandoned.
Yeah.
And so they put them all together in an anthology and put it out there. And they all had potential of being good had they actually fleshed out ideas and actually thought of an entire plot and whatever. But as they stand, they feel like the opening
Yeah.
of like 5 different films
Yeah.
by decently competent people, which
Mm.
was really fucking frustrating to watch because you were like, oh, you're like watching and you're like, I'm kind of into this. Like, this
Mhm.
is interesting. And then it's over and you're like, what just happened? Nothing.
Yeah.
More, please. No. Okay, we're done.
Yep.
The wraparound is pretty terrible. I don't even understand its incorporation. Um, because it tries to play out like this kid is scared in his bed, and then he calls on his dad, and his dad comes in, and for some reason he decides to like read him a really scary story when the
Mm.
kid's already so scared he can't sleep and is
It's
asking his
really
dad to come
funny.
in there.
We were like
That
laughing
makes
about that.
no
He
sense.
reads
That
a
is like
terrifying story,
abusive.
and then it's like, "Good night."
But even though the stories aren't even that scary, but that's the intention. Like that's
Yeah.
what they're supposed to be. You shall not sleep tonight, right?
And the kid's kind of like, "Good night, Dad."
But then the dad goes away, and then the kid's reading comics around his room that I guess
Yes.
are supposed to be these
The
tales,
stories, yeah.
but they're not, because when he looks in them, they're not the stories that we're looking at. So they're trying to do a creep show thing. But in creep show, when the kid opens up Father's Day, it's clearly the story from Father's
Yeah,
Day.
yeah.
So that was another weird part, which also proves my point that this is a completely disjointed property, like that these stories were not made for this film.
Yes. I think you're right.
So
It was really bad. Don't watch it.
yeah, it's a
We
shame.
shouldn't have watched it.
It's a shame. I feel
Yeah.
like it could have been good, but it
Could
just
have, but it was not.
no, it was not. Um yeah, and the acting from like the wraparound segment was just dreadful. And then lastly, this one I don't have a lot to say about is Witch, which is set in 1575 England. It's like almost like a fantasy tale, like a wizard kind of guy, and so a witch in town, and of course, the townsfolk want her lynched, and he's kind of trying to come in and save this couple, and there's this opening that they you're trying to figure out like what the hell happened there. Um, this is a super ambitious project. This is a movie that definitely had a lot of writing put into it, a lot of effort, thought, and put into it. And overall, I think that this is like one of those types of films that it's like it is only for a very, 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 very specific
Mm.
group of people. And I feel like if it can find its audience, this will have like a little bit of a cult following to it, but a very small cult following. This is a film that is, I think has a lot of heart to it. I think that overall, I thought it was okay. But I was impressed by like how much they wanted to do with how little
Mm.
they had to try to do a movie that was set in the 1500s and to have like castles and knights and wizards and witches and magic. And I was like, wow, we are really biting off a whole hell of a lot more than we can chew here. But this was one I had started forever ago and finally just finished today. So I did watch the first half of it like 6 months ago and the second half of it today. So I can't give a proper, review on this. Kaylee watched the first half with me like 6 months ago, but we never ended up finishing it. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's not bad. It's not bad, but man, it's low budget, and a lot of people will be like, absolutely not. So
Yeah.
I think that's it. So there's 8 2024 films to close out the year.
We actually watched more than I thought while we were sick.
Well, yeah, because you only
So,
watched like, you know, maybe 3 or 4 accumulatively,
yeah. Yeah.
and I watched all 8. But that's that. So that's the end of 2024. That'll probably be the last films we discuss or review for the year. I was too shy of 300. I was trying to push myself to do, to get to the 300 mark, but I don't see where the time is gonna go. I
Yeah.
might honestly just watch 2 more,
Like garbage films.
just to say I did it. There were
Garbage
some films,
Shark.
and we'll talk about it, but there's some films that got some decent buzz, like In Flames and Tiger
Mm.
Stripes, that were from different countries
Yeah.
that just never really got talked about again after the festival stuff. And I
Mm.
feel like no one watched them, but I didn't get to see those. And unfortunately, money is super tight for us right now because we've been sick and we've not been working, so renting anything is a no.
No.
But yeah, those are movies. But that's it for 2024. What did you guys watch this year? Was it a good year for you? This is definitely the best year for horror
Oh, yes.
um, in a long
Definitely.
time, if not ever. And we'll see it in the next video, which will be the best of 2024. What will be
Yay.
on there and what will be snubbed.
Yep.
All right. See you there. Bye.
Bye.